What simulations do for us in all the places that we use them is it allows a soldier or a leader to experience situations and to practice on those situations before you get there, before you have to be exposed to, for us, the harshness of combat.
My name is Dan Parisi, and I'm an Executive Vice President at BTS, a firm that specializes in using highly customized business simulations to develop corporate leaders. The purpose of today's interviews is to explore the value of using simulations in high-stakes learning environments. To me, the U.S. military represents the epitome of high-stakes learning environments where the quality of leadership development can literally have life and death consequences. My belief is that corporate leaders interested in the development of their own talent can learn a lot from how the U.S. military trains its officers. BTS only has experience in using simulations for corporate leadership development. In the brief conversations today with the General, we'll learn more about how the military is applying cutting-edge simulations, and we'll look at parallels with how BTS clients apply simulations in the corporate world. I'd like to start with a philosophical perspective, though, in my answer to why simulations are extremely important to developing senior corporate leaders. If you look at all areas of elite human performance, such as the military or even professional sports teams, they spend a disproportionate amount of time practicing. With the military, when they're not warfighting, they're practicing constantly. With sports teams, when it's not a live game, they spend the rest of the day or the rest of the week practicing. In a corporate setting, however, every day is a battle or every day is a live game, and there's very little time to practice. I like to call time spent practicing versus the time spent performing the practice to performance ratio. Practice to performance ratios in corporate America are much lower than in other fields interested in high performance. At BTS, we believe that if companies increase the amount of time they spent building capability and practicing new strategies, they would see better, faster execution of strategy and ultimately better business results. We predict more and more companies will start adopting what the military has known all along: dynamic practice in the confines of a safe, simulated environment drives higher performance.
Why it's important that we have a view of the battlefield is generally applicable to everybody. People make good decisions when they have the right information and they well understand the conditions that apply so that they know the environment they're in, they understand the tasks that they've got to accomplish. Those kinds of things can be programmed into simulations so that the leader can be immersed, can visualize the conditions. Like we visualize the terrain, we visualize the weather. We can put all of those things into simulations. And that's a more immersive environment than you can achieve just from desktop kinds of practical exercises or case studies or the other kinds of things that we try to use to develop leadership and decision-making skills.
The General uses a great expression. He says that in the military, simulations allow leaders to visualize the battlefield. That's great language. I believe that when the General uses that language, he's referring to how leaders really need to see the bigger picture, especially when trying to operate within a dynamic, multidimensional, multifactorial environment. On the corporate side, business leaders are challenged with the same thing. BTS business simulations allow executives to visualize their battlefield as well. The business battlefield is simply the marketplace. Corporate leaders should have a thorough understanding of market dynamics, customer segments, competitor strengths and weaknesses, and the perceived value of their own value proposition. And it's very difficult to have an opportunity where they can practice with all those elements and see how they all work together. Of course, they also, to make it even more complicated, have to be able to visualize how their supply chain and operations feed into that battlefield or marketplace. So when BTS runs a simulation engagement with senior leaders, we often ask them to try to take an aerial view or a broader view of their business so they can make better informed business decisions. Simulations are a highly effective environment for helping officers or executives visualize their respective battlefields and make better, faster decisions.
It's again about being able to have the right information and be comfortable with how it's going to appear that then allows you to be more intuitive about your decision making. Because most of the time, the critically important decisions that our leaders make have to be made very rapidly. And it has to be from a good, solid, intuitive understanding of the environment. We now define the threat. You know, we analyze the threat and then we define the threat and then we prepare for the threat. And the way we define the threat now is we don't have a clue. The threat can be anything from anywhere. So you can't prepare people prescriptively for that. You have to prepare them to be able to solve the complex problems, the fuzzy, nasty looking problems that are in front of them. And that is both intuitive and it has to be dynamic. It has to be that you can iterate through the cause and effects. And the most important thing for us in our business is, and this is General Petraeus' statement, it says the bad guys get a vote. So they can change the conditions and we have to be able to respond to that positively. We have to outthink them, not outshoot them. We have to outthink them and outshoot them now.
The General and I also had some far-reaching discussions around what it means to create intuitive leaders, both in business and in the military. There's a lot of recent literature in the business world where the acronym VUCA, or VUCA, is used to describe the current global business environment. VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. As the General would tell you, this acronym originated in the military. What I learned in my discussions at the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College is that they see simulations as a way to train leaders to be more effective in a VUCA world. They believe intuitive leadership is the antidote to the challenges posed by VUCA. To me, intuitive leadership means leaders who don't need a rule book or policy and procedure manuals to make decisions in an extremely difficult environment. Another part of being an intuitive leader is having the experience under your belt to be able to make high-quality decisions without all the data. I once had a client CEO say to me that he expects his leaders to be able to make good decisions with only 70% of the data. I believe this is a big overlap area for developing both military and corporate leaders. In well-constructed simulation environments, leaders are forced to make decisions without all the data, under difficult time pressure, and with uncertain outcomes. These kinds of simulated decision-making drills help build more intuitive leadership styles. The military believes that building intuitive leadership capability in its officer ranks is an absolute advantage on the battlefield, and most corporate leaders would agree.
Simulations are important because they can be done under controlled conditions as opposed to the chaos that exists in the real world that our young leaders have to function in today. And if they make mistakes on the job while they're learning, people can die, and we can't afford that. Simulations give us the power that we can prepare them as much as you can be prepared for those conditions before they go into the battle space and before they have to face an adversary that is mean and nasty and doesn't play by any rules as we know them. Simulations can produce the kinds of environments that will make them better decision makers. They will grow through the simulation process. It is not a substitute for the real world experience, but it is the proper preparation. It provides the maximum safety for our leaders and the soldiers that they lead and guard.
So far we've talked about how simulations can help leaders visualize the battlefield, or in the corporate world, visualize the marketplace. We also talked about the role simulations play in helping to develop more intuitive leaders who can operate effectively in volatile environments. And the last concept I'd like to discuss is the concept of learning on the job versus learning by simulation. We all know that in a corporate environment, most learning happens on the job. There are even die-hard traditionalist line executives who believe that all learning should happen on the job because that's the best kind of training. No one would argue that the majority of training in corporate America happens on the job and via mentoring and coaching opportunities. However, I'd like to challenge the orthodoxy a bit and also challenge any senior corporate line executive with a concept that I learned at the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College. As I was talking to the Brigadier General about why they use simulations in the military, he said to me, "There are some things we don't want our military leaders learning on the job. In our world, learning by making mistakes on the job means people die." Well, that got my attention, and it got me thinking about the following question. In the corporate world, what are the things a CEO would not want his or her people to learn on the job? I informally conducted a survey of a few C-level executives and posed this question. And here were their top 4 answers to what they don't want their people learning on the job. Number 1, I don't want my team learning about what it means to run out of cash on the job. I don't want my team learning P&L management by trial and error. I don't want my team learning what it's like to lose our most important client on the job. And I don't want my team learning what it's like to lose top talent. Each of the above 4 scenarios could cost a company millions in lost productivity, lost earnings, and lost jobs. So just like in the military, business simulations are an excellent alternative to the much more costly approach of learning everything on the job.
The overall picture for simulations in the Army is that we use them at all stages of our training and our education. They have been involved in our training for a long time because they help us to repetitively prepare people to do the tasks that we know they have to do. And that's the training modality. And simulations, one-on-one simulations, are very, very powerful at doing that in a cost-effective and an efficient way. We are now learning that we can more and more build robust dynamic simulations that will allow us to develop leadership skills. They can create complexity in the situation that the person has to face more than we can create with case studies and other ways that we teach leader development and decision making and critical thinking. We're spending a tremendous amount of time now in the Army working at how you develop critical thinking and problem solving skills at lower and lower levels in the Army. And simulations are going to be a big part of that in all of our coursework, because they are powerful in being able to stress leaders without the complexity and the threats that we do in the natural environment that they have to work in.
When the stakes are high, when leadership development is critical to an organization's success, when the operating environment is volatile, and when learning on the job is just too expensive, corporate America is just starting to discover what the U.S. military has known for the last few decades. Simulations and experiential learning are one of the most effective methods for increasing leadership performance and accelerating business results.